He said, "Nobody needs you. You're boring." I went to those who live in the present. A year later, he gave me a standing ovation, with his new one, but at the award ceremony, he couldn't believe who he saw on stage. And yes, I looked gorgeous. It was one of those quiet evenings, the kind where everything feels still, almost too still. Noah and I had been sitting at the dinner table for what felt like hours, barely saying a word to each other. He was flipping through his phone, scrolling aimlessly, his eyes lost in whatever digital world he was in. I couldn't remember the last time we had a real conversation. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't comforting either. It was like an invisible wall between us, something that had been slowly building over the years, brick by brick. It had started with the little things, the missed anniversaries, the cancelled dates, the way he'd always be too tired to talk after work. At first, I'd chalked it up to the pressures of life, work, and routine, but after 10 years of marriage, I knew, really knew, that this wasn't just life getting in the way. This was something else. We had dinner, like we always did, with me cooking and Noah barely lifting a finger to help. The food was fine, maybe not the best I'd ever made, but it didn't matter. As I sat across from him, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us. We were like strangers now, bound by a decade of history and an obligation neither of us had bothered to address. I had just finished clearing the plates when Noah dropped the bombshell. "You're boring, you know that?" His voice was flat, without emotion, like he was stating a fact, not making a hurtful comment. I froze. My heart stuttered in my chest. Did I hear him right? My hand gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to say something, to fight back, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just looked at him, waiting for more. Was this some kind of joke? A test? But he didn't seem to care. He glanced up from his phone, his eyes not meeting mine. "You're boring. No one needs you anymore." I felt the blood drain from my face. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The hurt wasn't immediate. It was a slow burn, like a wound that wouldn't fully bleed out until later. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? How do you respond to that kind of accusation? How do you argue when the person who once promised to love you for better or worse now looks at you like you're just nothing? "What do you mean?" I finally managed to ask, though it sounded more like a plea than an actual question. He shrugged, barely acknowledging my existence. "I just think you've lost it. You're always the same routine, same dinner, same conversations, same everything. It's like you don't even try anymore." There it was, the indictment. I wasn't enough. I wasn't exciting, vibrant, or spontaneous enough to keep his attention. How many times had I tried to spice things up? How many times had I tried to pull us back to those early days when we laughed and talked for hours? It didn't matter. All he saw was a woman who had lost her spark, a woman who had faded into the background of his life. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him understand how much that hurt, but I didn't. Instead, I felt a knot of humiliation twist in my stomach. How did I let it get this far? I thought. How did I become this woman? The silence between us deepened. My heart ached, but I didn't know how to fix it. I had been trying for so long. But maybe, I was too late. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had lost something along the way, and there was no way to get it back. "Is that how you really feel?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Noah didn't even flinch. "Yeah, that's how I feel." That night, I lay in bed next to him, unable to sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the coldness of his words echoing in my head. I tried to ignore the gnawing ache in my chest, the sense of betrayal, the quiet fear of what this meant for us, but I couldn't. It was like a seed had been planted in my mind, and it was slowly growing, consuming me. For the first time in years, I felt completely alone, not just in the room with him, but in my marriage, in my life. He didn't see me anymore. Not the woman I was, not the woman I had been when we first met. I was invisible to him, and I didn't know how to change that. I thought of the last few months, the growing distance between us, The lack of intimacy, the silence. It wasn't just one thing. It was everything. I had been so focused on trying to keep things together, on being the perfect wife, the perfect partner, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to take care of myself. I had let myself disappear. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let this be the end. I wasn't going to let his words define me. I would find my spark again. I would find my strength. I didn't know how, but I was determined to. I wasn't boring. I wasn't invisible, and no matter what it took, I would make him see that. The next day, Noah left for work without a word. Just like always, I didn't say goodbye. I didn't try to make things better. I just let him go. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. I felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time: determination. I was going to make him regret that moment. It's strange how the world can feel like it's moving around you while you're stuck in place, frozen in the very moment of realization. I was stuck. I knew it, but I was done pretending. I had to figure out who I was now, what I wanted, because the woman staring back at me in the mirror wasn't the one I recognized anymore. For the first time in weeks, I found myself actually looking at my reflection. I'd gotten so used to the routines, the mindless tasks, and the duties of being someone's wife that I'd stopped taking care of me. I was just an accessory to Noah's life, someone who stood by him, supported him, tried to make things work, but who never got anything back in return. That woman in the mirror had her eyes clouded with sadness, but there was something else, something more dangerous, flickering behind those eyes: anger, determination. The spark that I thought had died was still there. But I didn't know where to start. How do you rebuild a life that's been quietly crumbling around you for years? How do you reclaim your dignity when the person who once loved you now looks at you like you're an afterthought? It felt impossible. I spent the next few days hiding in plain sight. I didn't want Noah to know how deeply his words had affected me, so I kept up the appearances. The house was still clean, the dinners still cooked, and I still smiled at the right moments when he came home. But inside, I was unraveling. Then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I got a call from my old friend, Claire. She and I had been inseparable in college, but life had pulled us in different directions. I'd gotten married, had a family, and she had gone on to build her career. We'd lost touch, but every now and then, she would send me a message just to check in. It was always light-hearted, but that day, her voice on the other end of the line was different. "I've been thinking about you," she said, her voice warm but tinged with concern. "How are you holding up? It's been too long since we've really talked." I hesitated. It felt like a trap, a way to expose my secrets, my insecurities, but Claire was the kind of friend who never judged, who always made you feel like everything would be okay. So, I told her almost everything. I left out the darkest parts, but I gave her the gist: how things had changed with Noah, how the spark between us had gone out long ago, how, in the end, he thought I was boring. Her silence on the other end of the phone made me second-guess myself, but then she spoke, and her words hit me like a punch in the gut. "I knew it," Claire said softly. "I've seen the way he looks at you. I've felt the distance between you two, and I've seen how you've started to disappear in your own life." I felt a lump form in my throat. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice cracking with emotion. "How do I fix it?" Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. "You don't need to fix it, Kate. You need to fix yourself first. You've been losing yourself, not just to Noah, but to this idea of what your life should be. You've been living for everyone else but you." I couldn't argue with her. She was right, but it didn't make it any easier. The conversation ended with her suggesting we meet up for coffee the next day, just to talk, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on. There was a tension in her voice that I couldn't place. Something was off. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Thoughts raced through my mind. I thought of Claire's words, of my life, and of the possibility that I might not be the only one who had been keeping secrets. The next morning, I left early to meet her. She had suggested a cozy cafe on the outskirts of town, a place where we used to hang out during college. I hadn't been there in years. The familiar scent of fresh coffee and the hum of quiet conversation made me feel nostalgic, but also strangely on edge. I found Claire sitting at a corner table, her head down, scribbling something in her notebook. She looked up as I approached, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I sat down across from her, my mind racing. Was she going to tell me everything? Was she going to reveal something that I wasn't prepared for? "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Claire looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker in her expression, something like guilt, but she quickly masked it, covering it with a fake smile. "Yeah, just thinking." I didn't buy it, but I didn't press her either. I needed her to open up on her own time. It was only after a few minutes of small talk that she finally spoke. "I have to tell you something," Claire began, her voice low, almost hesitant. "It's about Noah." My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know whether to feel angry, scared, or relieved, but there it was again, the cold knot in my stomach, the dread of what was coming. "Is he cheating?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, though I already feared the answer. Claire's eyes widened, and for a moment, she hesitated. Then, she nodded slowly. "Yes, but there's more." I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean?" Claire's gaze shifted nervously, as though she was debating whether to say more. I could see the conflict in her eyes, but I needed to know. I had to know. "You remember my friend Allison, right? The one I introduced to Noah a few years ago at our Christmas party?" I froze. Allison. I remembered her well, the ambitious, beautiful woman who always seemed a little too perfect. Too perfect for Noah, I had thought at the time. Claire continued, her voice trembling. "She's not just his friend, Kate. She's his mistress." My world tilted on its axis. It was like I had just heard my life being torn apart in a single sentence. The knot in my stomach tightened, and I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but instead, I just sat there, stunned. I had known something was off. I had felt it, deep inside, but hearing it from Claire made it real. I wasn't imagining things. Noah had been unfaithful, and worse, he'd been hiding it right under my nose. But why had Claire kept it from me? Why had she waited until now to tell me? My mind raced with questions, but before I could voice them, Claire added one more thing that took my breath away. "I didn't tell you before, Kate, because Noah asked me to keep it quiet. He didn't want you to know, but I can't watch you go through this anymore. You deserve to know the truth." I could feel the anger bubbling up, hot and fierce. I had been blind to the betrayal, living a lie for months, maybe years, and now, it was time to stop being the fool. I walked out of the cafe, feeling like the weight of the world had just been lifted from my shoulders. I wasn't invisible anymore. I had the truth now, and I wasn't going to let it slip through my fingers. Noah thought I was boring. He thought no one needed me, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. I wasn't the same woman I used to be. And I was going to make sure he knew that. The days that followed were a whirlwind. My mind was a storm, and I couldn't focus on anything other than Noah's betrayal. The house, once a home, now felt cold. Every corner was filled with memories of a life I thought was real, but it was all a facade. I had been living in a house of lies, but I was done pretending. That evening, after Noah returned from work, I greeted him with a forced smile. I didn't want him to see how deeply his betrayal had cut me, but at the same time, I wasn't going to be the same passive wife who'd let things slide. The air between us was thick with tension. "How was work?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Noah looked at me, his tired eyes scanning my face. He didn't seem to notice anything different about me, or maybe he didn't want to. He shrugged. It was fine. He kicked off his shoes and walked past me, heading for the kitchen. I watched him with a sense of disgust, though I hid it well. He was going about his routine like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. The truth hung in the air, ready to suffocate us both. I waited for the right moment to drop the bomb, but part of me wasn't sure if I could go through with it. What would happen after I confronted him? Would he lie again? Would he try to manipulate me? I had no idea, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this lie. I had to confront him. We had to confront this. "Why didn't you tell me about Allison?" I asked suddenly, my voice steady but my insides trembling. Noah froze. For a moment, there was only silence. Then he turned slowly, his face blank. "What are you talking about?" His voice was too calm, too practiced. I could feel the anger rising in me. How dare he lie to my face like this? "Claire told me everything," I continued, my tone colder now. "I know about you and her, Noah. You didn't even try to hide it." His eyes flickered, the mask slipping for just a second, but he quickly regained his composure. "This is ridiculous, Kate," he said, laughing, though there was no humor in his voice. "Why would Claire tell you that? She's just trying to stir up trouble." I couldn't believe him. He was still denying it. "Don't lie to me anymore, Noah," I said through gritted teeth. "I've known for months, maybe longer. I've felt it, felt the distance between us. I've been ignoring it, but I can't do that anymore." Noah's face flushed, and for the first time, I saw something close to fear in his eyes, but it didn't last long. He quickly masked it with anger. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," he snapped, taking a step toward me. "This isn't what you think. I didn't want to hurt you, but you've been boring. I'm not the only one to blame here." The words stung like a slap across my face. Boring? I had spent years, making our lives work, and he called me boring? I had worked hard to keep our home together, to support him when no one else would, and this was what he thought of me? The fury that had been building inside me finally erupted. "You're the one who's boring, Noah," I spat. "You're the one who's been hiding behind your lies. You're the one who thought you could have your cake and eat it too. Well, guess what? I'm done." I took a step back, my heart racing. I was shaking, but I was also free. For the first time in ages, I was standing up for myself. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I wasn't going to beg for his affection. Noah stood there, his face a mix of frustration and disbelief. "You're really going to throw away everything we've built? Just like that?" "Yes," I said firmly, my voice steady now, my resolve hardening with each passing second. "I'm throwing it all away, because you've already thrown me away. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine." There was a long silence between us, thick with unspoken emotions. Then Noah finally broke it, his voice low and bitter. "You think you can just walk away from this? You're nothing without me. You'll see." His words should have cut me, but instead, they only fueled the fire inside me. He thought I was nothing without him. I'd show him just how wrong he was. "I was something before I met you," I said, my voice quiet but full of conviction, "and I'll be something again. You'll see." I didn't wait for him to respond. I turned and walked out of the room, my heart pounding. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. The woman I had forgotten was coming back, piece by piece, and she wasn't going to let Noah, or anyone, tell her who she was. Over the next few days, things between Noah and I became strained, to put it mildly. There were no more friendly conversations, no more pretending. I kept my distance, retreating into myself and my thoughts. I couldn't shake the image of Noah with Allison. The betrayal ate at me, gnawing at my insides. But there was something else, too. A feeling that something wasn't right, that I wasn't seeing the full picture. Claire's warning had been loud in my ears. "You deserve the truth, Kate. Don't let him manipulate you again." But the truth felt elusive. There was a piece of the puzzle that was still missing. I couldn't help but think back to what Claire had said about Noah's mistress, Allison. It didn't sit right with me that she had been so involved in Noah's life for so long. And then there was the strange way Claire had been acting lately. She seemed distant, almost guilty. I decided to take matters into my own hands. The next morning, I woke up early, a sense of urgency pulsing through my veins. I couldn't let this drag on any longer. I needed answers, and I needed to confront them head-on. I drove to Claire's apartment, my mind racing with possibilities. What if Claire knew more than she was letting on? What if she was hiding something, too? When I arrived, I was met by a stunned look from Claire as I walked through the door without knocking. She was sitting on the couch, her eyes wide as if she hadn't expected me to show up so soon. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tell me the truth, Claire. I know you're hiding something." She looked at me, a flicker of fear crossing her face. Then, she let out a deep breath and stood up, walking toward me slowly. "I wasn't sure when you'd figure it out," Claire said, her voice barely a whisper, "but Noah's not the only one keeping secrets." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Claire's eyes flickered toward the door, almost as though she were looking for an escape. She took another step closer, and I braced myself for what was coming next. "I'm the one who's been helping him all along," she admitted quietly, her voice full of shame. "I'm the one who's been covering for him. I didn't know how to tell you, Kate. I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't want to lose you." I felt like the floor had just dropped out beneath me. "You helped him?" I repeated in disbelief. "You've been lying to me, too?" Claire nodded, her eyes filled with regret. "I never meant for it to go this far, but when I saw the way he was treating you, I couldn't stand it. I thought if I kept helping him, maybe things would get better for you. But I was wrong, and I'm so sorry, Kate. I never meant to hurt you." I was numb. The betrayal from Noah was one thing, but this was something else entirely. The woman I had called a friend had been just as complicit in my misery as he had been. I felt the pieces of my world slipping further away, but I was done. Done with the lies, done with the secrets. And now, I would make them all pay. After Claire's confession, I left her apartment without a word. I was numb, my mind reeling with everything she had just revealed. She had helped him. She had been there, aiding him in his betrayal. For years, I had trusted her, shared everything with her. And yet, she was a part of the lie, a collaborator in my own destruction. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. What was I supposed to do with all of this? How was I supposed to process the fact that the people closest to me, the ones I had trusted the most, had been conspiring behind my back? When I walked through the door of the house, the silence was deafening. Noah was in his study, and the tension in the air was thick. I had been avoiding him, but now, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I needed answers, more than I had before. I needed to understand why. I found him sitting at his desk, scrolling through his phone, the very picture of indifference. His casual demeanor only infuriated me more. "Noah," I said, my voice tight with barely contained fury. He didn't even look up, still absorbed in whatever he was reading. "Noah," I repeated, louder this time. He finally glanced up, his expression one of annoyance, as if I was the one interrupting his peace. "What now, Kate?" he asked, his voice dripping with impatience. "I know everything," I said, my voice shaking but strong. He raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" I took a step closer to him, my anger bubbling to the surface. "I know about Allison. I know you've been with her for months, maybe longer. You think I didn't notice? You think I couldn't feel the distance between us?" Noah's face twisted into something I almost didn't recognize. It was a mix of irritation and something else, regret, maybe, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Listen," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This isn't what you think. You don't understand." His voice was cold, and for a moment, I could almost hear the smugness in his tone. It was as if he still thought he could control this, still thought he could make it sound like my fault. I clenched my fists at my sides. "No, not anymore. You don't get to lie to me anymore, Noah," I said through gritted teeth. You don't get to tell me what I do or don't understand. You think you can just throw me away and replace me with her? My voice cracked, but I steadied myself, standing tall. You don't even see me anymore, do you? You haven't for a long time. He exhaled sharply, as if he was growing frustrated with my persistence. This is ridiculous, Kate, he said, his voice rising. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just trying to find something I was missing. You're not the same person anymore. You've become so boring, so predictable. The word hit me like a slap, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Boring. It was as though he was speaking a truth I had always feared but never fully admitted. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Boring? I said, my voice almost a whisper. Is that what you think of me? After everything we've been through? You're the one who's boring, Noah. You're the one who's been too weak to face the truth. I took another step forward, my chest tightening. You don't get to ruin everything we built and then walk away from it without any consequences. Not anymore. Noah stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You think you can just walk away from this? You think you can leave me with nothing? His face was flushed with anger now, his hands clenched into fists. I stood my ground, every word coming out with cold precision. I already did walk away. Noah, you're the one who pushed me out, and now I'm taking back what's mine. You're not going to have me on a leash anymore. Not emotionally, not financially, nothing. I turned, walking toward the door of his study. I didn't need to hear him beg, didn't need to listen to his excuses. He'd had enough chances to change, and he'd thrown them all away. I'm done, I said over my shoulder, my voice steady, even though the storm inside me was still raging. And don't think for a second that you'll get to have it both ways. This is the last time you'll do this to me, Noah. As I left the room, I could hear his voice rise behind me. You'll regret this. You think you can live without me? You're nothing without me. The words cut into me, but they didn't sting the way they once would have. Now, they felt hollow, empty. And suddenly, I realized something. He was right about one thing. I was nothing without him. But that was the old me, the one who had been too scared to make her own decisions. Too scared to stand up for herself. That woman was gone. Now, I was someone else, someone stronger, someone who would no longer let herself be broken by a man who never cared enough to protect her. I had nothing left to lose, and that was the most powerful feeling in the world. The next few days were a blur of decisions. I didn't stay in the house, not with Noah still there. I packed a bag and moved in with a friend. I couldn't look at the place where all of this had happened, not yet. Not when I was still processing everything. I spent hours in the quiet of my new temporary home, thinking. I was done being a passive player in my own life. But I had a plan now, a cold, calculated plan. I reached out to a lawyer, someone I knew could help me navigate the mess I was about to create, the business Noah had been running, the finances. He'd been hiding money, and I was going to find it. I was going to make sure he paid for everything he'd taken from me. And then, I would leave him with nothing, just like he had tried to do to me. The day I was scheduled to meet with the lawyer, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Claire. I'm sorry, Kate. I never meant for it to go this far, but I can't stand to see you suffer anymore. You need to know the truth. I stared at the message, the weight of it sinking in. I couldn't ignore it, not now, not when I was so close to getting what I needed. The truth. I was starting to think that maybe that was the last piece I needed to finish this game. I sent a quick response, my fingers shaking as I typed. Meet me. I need to hear everything. I didn't know what to expect when I walked into the small, nondescript cafe where Claire had asked to meet. The weight of everything, the secrets, the betrayals, the looming decisions, hung heavily on me. It was as though I was standing on the edge of a cliff, one step away from everything unraveling. I spotted Claire at a table in the back corner, her eyes scanning the room nervously. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. her hands fidgeting with the edge of her coffee cup. When she saw me, she waved me over with a forced smile. "Kate," she said softly as I sat down across from her, "I'm so sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you." I studied her carefully. Her face was lined with guilt, but there was something else, something more calculating behind her eyes. I couldn't figure out if she was being sincere or if this was just another act in the performance she'd been playing with Noah. "You said you had something to tell me," I said, my voice flat. "Something important. What is it?" Claire hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table. She seemed almost afraid, and yet, I knew she had to know that there was no turning back now. The pieces were already in motion. I don't know how to say this," she began, her voice trembling, "but I've been part of it. Everything that happened with Noah. I didn't just..." I leaned forward, cutting her off. "You didn't just what? Betray me? Help him destroy everything I built? You've already broken me. Claire, just say it. What is it you've been hiding?" She winced, but then she took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for the worst. "I was involved with Noah, not just the affair, Kate. I was part of a plan," she said, her eyes meeting mine now, no longer avoiding my gaze. "I didn't know it would go this far. At first, I thought I was helping him find a way out of his rut. He was feeling trapped, you know, and he wanted to get out of the marriage. He told me everything, Kate, how bored he was, how he needed someone new, someone exciting, and I helped him. I made sure you wouldn't suspect anything. I convinced you that everything was fine, that it was just you." My stomach twisted. The betrayal was worse than I had imagined, but it wasn't just her fault. I had to admit that Noah had been orchestrating this from the very start, using everyone around him as pawns. "You helped him?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "How could you do that, after everything we went through together?" She winced again, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't know what to do. At first, I tried to get him to see sense. I wanted to stop him, but I didn't have the courage to confront him. He promised me everything. He said if I played along, I could have whatever I wanted. He was going to give me everything. But then I started to see how much damage he was really causing, and I hated myself for it. That's why I'm telling you now. I can't live with the guilt anymore." I let her words sink in, but I didn't feel the sense of closure I thought I would. It was too late for that. This was more than just a story of betrayal. It was a game, a dangerous, twisted game that I had unknowingly been part of. The real question was, what now? I leaned back in my chair, staring at Claire, trying to figure out my next move. I had everything I needed now, every piece of information, every betrayal, all the lies were unraveling. The question was whether I could pull it all together into something that would destroy Noah completely. "I'm going to make him pay," I said quietly, my voice cold, my mind already turning over the plan. "I'm going to take everything from him, and you're going to help me." Claire looked at me in surprise, her eyes wide. "Kate, what? Help you? I can't." "You will," I said firmly. "You owe me that much, and more." She hesitated for a moment, but then her eyes softened. She looked almost relieved. It was like she had been waiting for this moment, waiting for me to make the decision that would free her from the role she had been playing. "I'll help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever you need." The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and meetings with my lawyer. I was careful now. Every step I took was calculated. I'd spent too long being passive in this marriage, letting Noah dictate the terms. But now, everything had changed. I was a woman on a mission, and I wouldn't stop until I had reclaimed my life. Claire came through as promised. She helped me gather everything I needed, Noah's secret accounts, his hidden investments, all the proof of his infidelities. She even helped me access his business records. The final blow, though, was going to be the hardest. Noah was about to lose everything, but not just his money or his business. I was going to make sure that when I left him behind, He had nothing left to hold on to, not his pride, not his reputation, not even the new life he had started with Allison. I had one final piece of the puzzle left to pull together, the announcement. I would do it publicly, in front of everyone who had ever believed in him, in front of the people who had thought he was better than me. I'd take the stage where he had humiliated me once before, and I would make him pay for it. The night of the event arrived. Noah, ever the charmer, was preparing for his big presentation. It was all for the business. His new partnership with Allison was going to be announced, and everyone in the industry was waiting with bated breath. I dressed carefully, choosing a dark, elegant outfit that screamed confidence. I walked into the event, and I could feel all eyes on me. It was time. The moment Noah took the stage, I was there, sitting in the front row, my gaze locked on him. I could see the smugness in his eyes, the way he had that everything is under control expression on his face. And when he began his speech, I stood up, slowly, deliberately, and I interrupted him, not with words, but with the truth. I stepped forward, pulling out a stack of papers that detailed every lie, every betrayal, and I laid them down on the stage, one by one, for everyone to see. This is the truth, I said, my voice calm, steady. This is what your so-called success has been built on: lies, deceit, and betrayal, and you're going to have to live with that, because I'm done being a part of your game. The room went silent. For a moment, Noah stood there, frozen. Then, his face twisted in shock, disbelief. He was lost, and in that moment, I knew he was never going to recover from this. I had won. The crowd erupted in chaos. Noah tried to speak, but the damage was done. No one cared about his explanation. His reputation was shattered. His empire was crumbling before his eyes. I turned, walking away without looking back. I didn't need to hear his apologies, his excuses. I was free. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The game was over, and I had won.